Hey, this week we're going to review Sanhedrin Daf Nuntes through Samachay.
Okay.
It starts talking about Shemus Bnei Noach and a little bit about cursing Hashem, Mevarech Hashem we call it. And then we talk about ways of serving Avodah Zarah, and that's the meat of the seven blahs, exactly how we learn that ways to serve Avodah Zarah, and Lachalik, and Lav, all that fun stuff. And then we talk about mentioning Avodah Zarah, and we talk about Molech in the end. And then today we talked about Dorish and Almesim, Onin, Manachish, and Chashiv, all that fun stuff. The Adoni, right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Right. Okay. But so we'll start off Daf Nun Tes. Daf Nun Tes starts the end of, I'll start from the end of the Maseches Sanhedrin, where it says Goyish Shavas is Chayiv Misa, and that's apparently Shavas any day of the week. Then we talk about Goy who learns Torah is Chayiv Misa. There's Dam and Hachai we talked about, which is a offshoot of Avram and Hachai, offshoot, whatever. The question is, there were mitzvahs that were said to Bnei Noach that were repeated or not repeated Har Sinai. What's the difference? If it was repeated, if it wasn't repeated. Then on Beis we talk about Rishon who could not eat meat. And did he eat meat? Did he eat birds, chicken, anything like that? And the meat that fell from the sky, which is always kosher. Okay, this is a puzzle we're going to see. We see it now. This is a puzzle which talks about dam benefesh. It's basar benafsho dam lo sechir. The first puzzle is even benachai. Ach basar meat benafsho. When it's still a nefesh, then you should eat. And then we switch around the pasuk like we just saw. We take a wet basar and we take dam and we slide it over like so.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah, very cool. And yeah, so that's the Joshua for dam min basar, which according to one dam is iser. Oh, that's all the charts for now. All right, seeing that in the Gemara, starting in the bottom of Chesed Beis. This is an interesting thing I have to highlight it. You have to work very hard. If you make yourself like an Eved La'adama, you spell lochem. So you got to work very hard. Fine. That was at the end of last week. And over the Chodesh Shavas, Chayiv Misa, any day of the weekend, I did not put in the picture of the guy guy who's eating a Shabbos food and gets zapped by lightning. So fine. Over the Chodesh that learns Torah is Chayiv Misa. There's two reasons. Either it's Morasha or Me'orasa. Right? Morasha means the hereds, Morasa means Dina Kana Morasa. It's like we are engaged to Torah. So, but then we come to Dam and Hachai. Dam and Hachai is similar to Ibn Hachai. And Rachni Gamliel says Dam and Hachai is also from the pasuk that we just saw with the word Dam floating around. But the Gemara does bring it in later for a different purpose. There's a different. The Gemara brings in a few blot where you eat the meat when the animal's still alive. That's different. That's eating meat. It could be salted also just before the. You don't have to salt actually if you just eat raw meat. No.
Why not?
Not sure. Anyway, yeah, but that the Gemara brings in later. Huh? Not sure. Yeah, but that the Gemara brings in a few blot. Yeah, but this is just pashat dam and achai. The blood.
They certainly states of beef tartare or whatever.
Yes. Although I'll tell you, beef tartare. My brother-in-law eats beef tartare, and it's really cheating because he spices it for like a day. So it's like pickled already. It's like whatever. It technically wasn't cooked, but it's been spiced for like over a day. So like. It's probably the same thing. It's uncooked meat. Fine. So now we have Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina says, if a mitzvah was said to Bnei Noach and it was said over by Har Sinai, then it applies to Jews and to Goyim. But if it was said only to Bnei Noach and it was not repeated in Har Sinai, then it was said only for the Jews. So
Wow.
why? So the bottom line, the Gemara seems to end up is that it can't be right? It can't be that that the Jews are not mechuyev for something, the Goyim are mechuyev for something, right? And the Gemara says, "Adrab, miloches b'sinai l'bnei Noach," right?
And only to
So the Gemara says, "Leika midam the Yisrael shall it can't be such a thing that the Yisrael's usher, that the Yisrael's mutter, the God, whatever, the Jews don't have the mitzvahs, the God has the mitzvahs. It can't be." Right. So the Gemara basically, I think the Gemara's answer just can't be such a thing. Huh? Yeah. I think this is where the Gemara addresses the Gemara, but the Gemara says leko midam. There's no such thing, right? That's what it says. I don't know. Maybe because we know there's no such thing, we're trying to roll back into the drasha. I don't know. Fine. Anyway, the Gemara brings up a few cases where there are things that were said to the Jews and not to Bnei Noach. All right, 1 second. Like Mila, huh? Right. So we said if it was said again, we said if it was said to Bnei Noach and to the Jews, then they both have to keep it, right? Right. That's what we said, right? Here. Right. So any mitzvah now which it says Bnei Noach and it says again Har Sinai, everyone should be keeping. So, for example, Bris Milah said to Bnei Noach.
But it says nothing about Shabbos. Shabbos is not.
No, but it wasn't right. That's fine. No, it was only said to the Jews. Fine, for sure, it's to the Jews.
But you said it's Har Sinai.
Yeah. What do you mean? I mean to the Jews. Yeah. The Jews that have seen it, right?
Right. So if
But-
those specific things that were said to the Bnei Noah, and they happened to be said at the time of Har Sinai, is that what you're saying?
No. If it was said to Bnei Noach and it was repeated to the Jews when the Jews were getting the Torah,
Right.
everyone's supposed to keep it. The Bnei Noach and the Jews.
Right.
So, question is, Bris Milah was said before, and it was repeated at Har Sinai time for the
Yeah, it
Jews.
wasn't told to be the Noah.
No, it was. So
It wasn't told to be Noah. That's what I'm saying is when Gemara brings it down, I
Right.
understand that question because it was never given to Bnei Noah, so therefore why would it be?
so it
questioned?
says in Bereshis, "V'atos b'isi tishmor himolachem kol zachar." The Gemara leaves that in the pasuk, right?
But that was to who?
That's to Avram.
Okay.
Yeah, Avram wasn't Jewish.
And neither were Yaakov, neither they all were.
All right,
Jewish.
so
Okay.
fine. No, but
I don't know. This is got the question whether they were considered Bnei Noach, were they following mitzvahs, all Bnei mitzvahs or not. But we never said that the Avos were Bnei Noach outright, did we?
well, the point is, it was said earlier on. All right, that's a good question. I mean, right? Get Nosher, the Gemara does. All right, fine. I hear, but Lamaisa was said before pre-Jewish Torah. So the Gemara anyway pushes it off. The Gemara says no, that was just Lamisha Shabbos Uda Asa. That was just a saying that you could do a bris on Shabbos, even right. In other words, and the Gemara brings another example. The Gemara is going to categorize it. It says in the beginning of the Torah, the Bereshis, and then it says at the end of Har Sinai, it says Lechem Alachem Shuv Alachem Alechem. They had separated from their wives, and then they were mutter back to their wives. So it says that's also tells us a side thing. And then the Gemara qualifies us as that as har mistava. If it says an azhara and then it repeated it, then that's what we're talking about, which is only by Gid Hanosha. Right? So those the practical cases only Gid Hanosha. But those just because the Torah mentions it doesn't make a difference. Right? It has to be that the Torah talks about it, and then there's another azhara in the Torah. The fact that the Torah mentions it later for some other reason, that doesn't count, and it doesn't mean that they know I have to keep it. Fine. And the other thing, the other teretz about Milah is the famous teretz that Iba say on Milah. You can ask me a question from this Milah. I'll tell you that it says Ki b'yitzchak chazara v'lo kol yitzchak. That it's the bris. This is talking about I guess this is in the same parasha as the bris, I believe. And it says Ki b'yitzchak v'lo kol yitzchak. So first of all, it wasn't Avraham. It wasn't for Ishmael, it was only Yitzchak, and Yitzchak is not Esav.
But it happens to be by Avram.
Right, it was said to Avram. So that, again, we're answering the same question.
Right.
It was said to Bnei Noach, who's called Avram. and it was said to the Jews. Teretz is no, it was said to Avram only for Yitzchak, big Yitzchak, only for Yaakov, not Esau.
And for his son.
Right, he did. Right, he did it for Yishmael also, but it wasn't the bris. Right, it's a good question. He did it for Yishmael, and that's the whole thing, right? But they still do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, other Rishon. So the Gemara is trying to bring the Gemara. First of all, it's nice information. The other Rishon could not eat meat, and of course we know the pasuk says when Noah came, the question is, so until Noah came along, there wouldn't be any Evan Chai because they weren't eating meat. So, there was still Isra Evan Chai. Now, where could it be? It can't be by the Gemara says maybe it was talking about birds, fish, or birds, or a snake. Ooh, I don't have a video. Shoot.
Which one?
Huh? No, there's no with the snake pushing the lawnmower.
Oh yeah, a little motor behind it.
Right. So right. So all these things, it says, you can have the birds and you can have the what do the birds do? So the birds thresh the wheat. And the nachash, so the nachash served Adam Rishon, right? Right. It says Adam Rishon, so but the nachash was serving him, he wasn't going to eat the nachash. The nachash was serving as his personal servant. Right? Adam Rishon he was sitting down eating, and the malachim were doing meat. Oh, there you go. Fine. I actually have it here. I have the video download, but
What do you come up with these? It's the face of the baseball cap.
whatever. Anyway, fine. Yes. So the answer is that Adam was allowed to eat meat from the sky, right? And there's a kosher, right? There was a story where meat fell down from the sky, and it says it's kosher. How do you know that's good hechsher, right? So right? And it says right? That it's coming from the Shemaim, it's from Hashem's house. You can eat by his house, right? And let's say it came back down in the Mos Chamor, and still he says the same thing. Right. Fine. So that is that daf. Now, daf 60, here we go. Let's move this over. Additional mitzvahs b'nei Noach, we'll see two of them. Now, a source for standing on hearing Hashem's name, which is Eglon, Tirin Kriya, which is someone like Rav Sheka, someone who passed along a message with cursing Hashem. Tirin Kriya for blasphemy of adultery, right? So the question is if they use a kinoi. If a guy uses a kinoi, do we tear kriya for that in the old days? Now we don't because our clothing will be full of rips because everyone's cursing Hashem. The goyim are cursing Hashem all the time. Afani kamo, right? That's what the Edom say in Bez. The only one says Hashem, and the other one says, oh yeah, like him, which has a practical difference, which actually we saw this week. If you don't know if how to give Chumas Amaisis, you could say Afani kamo. I want to do like it says in the Siddur, and actually in the Siddur it has the whole nusach for Chumas Amaisis. Then it has the one line which you can say in case you don't know the nusach, and it says, I want to do like it says in the Siddur. So, whatever. But categories of Avodah Zarah, here's where it gets fun. Basically, there's to do the actual Avodah like we do in the Beis HaMikdash, or we do Avodah like it's supposed to be served, however they made it up, or bowing, or you say Makaval Lokat, accept it for a God. That's what you get. A person gets kares for. There's another category which is a lav, which is just you show love to the Avodah Zarah. Okay, here is the Teves Bnei Noach. Here we're going to add on Kilayim Shal Bahim Shal Ilan. Here we're going to add on Kishuv. Okay, and this is the difference between Shmatim Schukais and Chusat Tishmu. The question the Gemara asks, which we'll get to, is that there's a general pasuk including all the mitzvahs. So all the mitzvahs are included. The Gemara says no. It depends where Chukosai is, but basically, the Gemara thought all the goyim would be included in all the mitzvahs. And the Gemara says no. It depends where the word Chukosai is. Fine. Okay. This is Zvicha Nashtachava. So we'll get into this. Maybe we'll get into this in a minute. The Zvicha is the way we serve karbanos, and Shtachava is talking about serving idols, serving avodah zarah. And basically, the Cheshbon the Gemara, we'll go through it, is if Zvicha is all inclusive, then Shtachava is limited to only bowing down, but not other forms of kippur b'nishuk, or derech kavod. So if Zvicha is not used for other stuff, then we can use it for derech kavod. If Zvicha, again, is used, your Yochanan has another use, then you have to use the Shtachva only for Shtachva, nothing else. Reish Lakish is similar. Then if Zvicha teaches you Mekatu Manasech, again, so Zvicha has specific. If Zvicha is telling you Kol Avodah, this is the basic call. Zvicha, which is talking about the actual service that we do for Karbanos, and Shtachava, which it says these psukim before, right? If Zvicha is inclusive of other things, then Shtachava just includes bowing down, but not hugging and kissing the avodah zarah. If Zvicha is not used to learn that other things, then you can learn Gipa Phoenician on the side, right? And the question is, what could Zvicha be used for? If Zvicha is used for its outside things, which it is, again, according to Reish Lakish, he has one thing. According to Yochanan's Hargens Zalech, he killed the guy of Shetzlik, then you can use it for the other stuff. So that's basically, I think, the hardest part of this. But let's see it inside. Fine. Right, so we add on Kishuf on the top, we add in Kalayim on the top. These are other opinions what Hashem is is. The Gemara asks, there's a catch-all pasuk, Shmartem Schukos Eves Mishpatai. But we said no, it depends where the word Chukim is in the pasuk. Okay, you have to have a shame of 4 names. This I didn't have on the introduction slide. You have to have a shame of 4 letters, right?
Right.
Not what? Not 2 letters, maybe, and also not
42 letters.
Great. The 42, right? So we're excluding shame rabba. What's the shame rabba? It means the 42, huh? 42. The baseball man, the sports man. Fine. Do we learn that you should get up when you say Hashem Hashem?
Because it says about the 4 letters, it says any 4, not just the 4 that we talked about.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought the opposite. I thought you gave up, Kel. I think so. I think these 4 only. But don't do it just in case.
Let's go on.
So Eglo Machmov, we know he stood up when he was presented by Ehud with a message from Hashem, and he stood up, and that's when he was killed. But because he stood up, he had his puss that Rus, right, came out of him, right? Yep. And then there was another story where they ripped their clothes when they heard a message from Sanhedrin, from a person named Rav Shokeh, right? And Sanhedrin sent a message. Sanhedrin, the king of Asher, sent a message cursing out Hashem because he didn't like the Jewish people or Hashem. And they ripped their clothes. And then from Elisha, you know that Elisha, of course, the famous phrase, Avi Rach Yisroel, Shem Krum Om, right? Elisha said, Avi Rach Yisroel, so that, and they were Krum Om. He never fixed his garments, which in those days was a big deal. Not like these days when you just pull out a Kriya shirt. The question is, Machlokas, if you hear a as they curse Hashem with not Hashem's name. So if the Goyim do it, maybe you would have to rip Kriya. So one the Amar says you don't. Rav Chia says right. So Rav Chia says Hashem Azkar B'Zman Hazeh, you don't have to rip. Why? Because if not that, then all of our garments will be ripped apart. But the other Madama says, and even in those days, you didn't have to rip it. Again, from the fact in Bezdin, when one guy says the curse, the other guy says, yeah, like him, so that's a legitimate thing. So that's a real legitimate thing. You say ditto has a clock to work. Fine. Okay, so here is the Mishnah about which basically reviewed outside, so we don't have to review it again, really. But again, there's 4 categories. There's ha'oved, which means you do real avoda, like we think of avoda, or the Gemara is oved kedarka. Hamazabeach makatim nasich. I'm sorry, oved means oved kedarka. That the Gemara says right over here. Right, that's the first part of the Gemara. Then Hamazabeach makatim nasich. That's the zvicha, which is the first box that we just saw. The Mishtachava, which is the second box, and the Kabbalah Kavel over Lo Keli Ata, which is a song, right? That if you say 2 words.
But isn't Mishtachava part of the Avodah?
No, so it's separate.
Right.
Oh, no, right. Even if Mishtachava, these things, there's one thing how you serve it. So you could be served by throwing stones at it, whatever. Then there's Shechting, which is what we do in the basic Tush, that's also very bad. And bowing down also, no matter if no guy in his right mind will bow down, but if you bow down, that's also bad. Because the basic mikvah stuff and bowing down, that's bad no matter what. And then the kasha we just went through before in the slides is does bowing down include hugging and kissing? But so basically it's the simple, huh? Right. Right, no, so automatically you're chayiv. For sure it's zvicha. Right, if over kedaka, for sure it's bad. Shechting is for sure bad. Shachvos is for sure bad. I told him about kares. Then the Gemara will talk about later in a couple of black things which are not kares and just mulav. That's a different category. All the other nice things you might do to avodah zarah, that's a lot. Whatever way you want to serve it, but it's not in these categories. That's just a lot. But over kedarka is the main one. I mean, over kedarka is you just serve it. Now this Gemara sources. These are sources for Zvicha, Zoveach Lohim Yachram, and this is not Shemus because it's Lohim, it's Lohim. And both these are not Shemus. And those are the sources. Towards the bottom, again, I don't think that go through all the words, but basically that's the var. We have Zvicha and Shtachava. Zvicha would include Mekato Manasech, burning stuff and pouring wine in front of it, and the Shtachava, let's say it's inclusive, would include also hugging and kissing, showing love to the Avodah Zarah. So depending if the other one is specific, then you could use that one to include all. Fine. That was summarize that. And the questions the Gemara is going to is what could Zvicha come to include? Fine. Now here's a sort of a sideshow the Gemara gets into before we get into Lachalik and La. That's the difficult part. The sideshow is Marculus, however you say it. Marculus, thank you. Was an Avodah Zarah they used to throw stones at. So let's say you relieve yourself. Oh, here we have an introductory slide.
Relieving oneself?
Oh, no, yeah,
Yes, we had that, but I didn't put that in. Oh, with the birds, right. Okay, so the Daf Samachav is Shechter relieving oneself in front of Marculus, because that's not the way you serve Marculus. There's a contradictory Mishnayos about verbally accepting a person as a deity, meaning if you say, I'm going to serve this Avodah Zarah, one Mishnah, our Mishnah is mashma not, and our Mishnah is mashma yes, and the Mishnah later is mashma not. I believe we'll see in the Gemara, and the Gemara gives 7 answers, which we'll do quickly. Claims about a distant idol. The Gemara just brings this in Derech Hagav, but it's a famous phrase that you see with Yivasam Shal Krovim. You see from the fact that the ones nearby are fake, so obviously the ones far away. are fake. Then the big machlokas, if you serve olazom me'arav a year, I mean, let's say a person puts a gun to your head and you do not give up your life, are you chayiv or pater? You chayiv and I guess a carbon or pater. So that's machlokas abayis is a chayiv, Rav says a pater. Okay, so these are the 7 terutzim which we'll read in the Gemara, but here is a short version of the terutzim. So our Mishnah says that if you say I will serve, then you're pater, okay. And the Mishnah of Samach Zayin says if you say I will serve, you're chayiv. So there's still hot butter. If he says I'm only, so the first teretz is our Mishnah says where he says I'm only accepting it when I serve it, but this is not. This shouldn't be chal now. It should only be later I serve it. Or if he says dibura milsi, or the machlokas is speaking something or speaking is not something. The machlokas is also, you could say, number 3, if there are many people who are being persuaded to serve Avodah Zarah, then there are pater. But if it's only, because maybe it's not going to happen, if there's one guy who's being persuaded, then he's going to be, for sure, go on to serve Avodah Zarah. Or this is bi'atzmo, if he has his own ideas, maybe he'll change his mind. This is pi'achir, if he has another guy pressuring him, also, he's not going to change his mind. Number 5 is interesting. Lo makach fels, the guy who's telling him to serve it didn't tell him how to do it. So his plan of I'll serve Avodah Zarah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Because he says, I'm going to serve Avodah Zarah. He doesn't know what it means. If he gave him instructions already, then he's already ready to serve it. Teretz number 6 is Yisrael. If he's a Jewish guy, regular, not Yisrael as opposed to Yisrael Mummer, a regular Jewish guy, even if he says I'm going to serve Avodah Zarah, probably he won't. Well, if he's Yisrael Mummer, if he's ready off the derech, and he says I'm going to do it, then he probably will do it. Okay, this is actually for the next stuff, but fine. So just to go through quickly in Gemara. Right, so pour out some markelos. If a person goes to the bathroom for markelos, he's pater. I would think since you serve the markelos by throwing stones, so let's say you go to the bathroom, it's the same thing. It's bizayin.
The person defecates markelos where you're throwing stones instead, but he wanted to serve it.
Right, so that's the name is pater. That's what the Gemara is saying. But if, let's say, you shecht something to markelos, then you're chayiv, even though no one shechts it, because you shecht it. Right. I would think maybe not, because the markelos you have to do something to deprecate, whatever. Fine. Now we have a stira, like we just saw on the slide. Our Mishnah says over the Muslim chavim, so that means if you serve it. And again, if you ask me, Baal Batish, I'd say like the final teretz that it means if you serve it, and the next Mishnah saying if you don't serve it, you say you're going to serve it. So like Lozu Afsu. That's the way Baal Batish, I'd explain it, whatever. So here's the 7 terutzim. He says, Eini mekabel lai ba'avodah. Our Mishnah says, I'm not accepting it right now until I actually worship it. Or you could say dibur lav nosi. Our Mishnah, dibur, just saying I'm going to do something is nothing. Or we say can't be yachid anisis. If there's a yachid who gets persuaded, that's much weaker. Because maybe he'll change his mind. This piasmo is also weaker because no one's pushing, so maybe he'll stop. Maybe he'll have a different idea tomorrow. Again, we said if our mission is the law, no one gave him instruction, so he doesn't know what to do. So he said his words, "I'm going to serve Avodah," don't mean anything. And then safer means the next one should be so mumer. That over there the guys are already off the derech. So yeah, if he says he's going to serve Avodah Zarah, he's going to serve Avodah Zarah. You could trust him. And the Ravina says, like we were saying, Lozu Afsu. Here is a big machokas by Rava. If you serve Avodah Zarah, Ma'av Meir, you're forced, right? And we know you heard Mayavar, but he figured that he's not going to be killed today. So is he chayiv a carbon? The Bai says yes, and Rava says no. So basically, we're going to make several rayas, and the basic raya is if there's something as a shagaga by avodas kochavim, right? If there's something as a shagaga by avodas kochavim, what could it be? No, it's because avodas kochavim you want to serve it. So how can you say I made a mistake serving avodas kochavim? So it has to be if there's such a thing as a shagaga by avodas kochavim, it has to be where you were forced to do it, right? If you didn't know what you're doing, if you're a shagaga, you didn't know it's avodah zarah, so then you weren't serving it at all, pretty much. So any place, and this talks about a har helm davar, where the Kohen Gadol did something bad. So it says if he does so it talks about what he does avodah zarah. So the only way that can happen is probably like a bayah, right? El alav kiblum after yira, and Rav will say Omer Mutter, right? Omer Mutter is a unique case. If this guy is Jewish, but he thinks avodah zarah is mutter, then he's chayiv. Omer Mutter is chayiv according to Rav. Okay, the last hard part. Right. So here, let's use the slides. So these slides, I think these slides are very good. Yeah. Here, this really should be next. This slide. Okay, sorry, the boxes are off. Too bad.
Oh no, redo.
And right now, fine. So basically, lechalik, if the pasuk is extra, it tells us that every time you do, let's say you do several types of worship at once, or multiple services, as they call over here, then you're chayiv lechalik, each one separate. If it's a lav yatsa, it means it has to tell us the chiddush of this thing itself. So it does not tell you the chiddush of lechalik, right? So lav yatsa means equals avodah zarah only brings one chatzos in multiple services. And the Gemara is going to spend a long time comparing it to Shabbos. Shabbos, Havor is lav yatsa or chalak yatsa, it's machokas. Why does the Torah talk about burning fire on Shabbos? Lalav or lachalik. And we say, hey, if we say by Shabbos, some people say it's lalav, that's not lachalik. So also we could say by avodah zarah, and then we reject that. In the end of the Gemara, at the end of the daf, we talk Masasik ba'achol baros. Masasik means you totally don't know what you're doing. And in the case of chalav, he swallows something and he thinks he's swallowing his own spit, but it's really fat, also fat, and that's chayiv. But Masasik b'Shabbos, if he's Masasik Shabbos, Shabbos needs Malachas b'Shabbos, so Shabbos is totally different. But that's the end of the daf. Right, so we have a lam tes malachos. This is by Shabbos. Havar is the you can't see. Well, Savaru ish b'chol Shabbos, right? So that's the lav. Now by Shabbos, so this pasuk is the extra pasuk which teaches us the chag. Asher lo se'asinu also me'achas meheno, and apparently from the words me'achas meheno is like 5 Joshes. Me'achas meheno, whatever. Right, but then the Shem Yishimon. Yeah. From Me'achas meheno, on 22. This is what we learn. Shem Yishimon. Whoops, and there's like the 5, 4, a lot of Joshes, totals and avs. So this is what we'll do by Shabbos, right? So this extra pasuk by Shabbos teaches us also lachalik, that you do different things, you get different punishments. Besides all these things, it's fine. Now we have a bright idea that why don't we say the same pasuk? This pasuk is not by Shabbos. This Asher L'Seh, right? So why don't we say it's talking about avodah zarah? And that would be lachalik. That would be this would be lachalik. That would be the lav, and that would be to tell you each time you serve avodah zarah is different. And basically, the reason at the end of the Gemara we can't say it is for this reason, because by avodah zarah, this pasuk is talking. This pasuk of Asa Machas Hena says by Kohen Hedyo, he gets a siras izim, and a par he brings a par by Kohen Gadol. But avodah zarah, we know everyone Kohen Gadol, Kohen Hedyo bring a siras izim. So at the end of the Gemara, that's why. That's why we can't do this. This pasuk, when we darshan it, tells us this. That siyasizim just for hedges and paras for Kohen Gadol. We know by Avodah Zarah, everyone brings the siyasizim again when you do it b'shogeg, and of course we say the word b'shogeg. So deep 5 months in the bottom, we'll mention again the Bayah Rava. How can you have shogeg about Avodah Zarah? You do Ava Yira, whatever. That's what it has to do. Fine. But so that's basically now. Of course, the story starts off in the Gemara that Rav Zakkai said this. Rabbi Zakkai, honey Rabbi Zakkai said this. Ein chayv el achas. He's only chayv one, and Rabbi Yochanan says, throw him out. Book ton libra, get him out. And then we spend the rest of the day saying it wasn't so crazy. Let's look, like they said, let's make it similar to Shabbos. The Lav Yatzab, because there's an extra pasuk. And then we say no, that there's only one pasuk, so we can't say Lav. Right? I'm sorry, right? We have only one pasuk when you use it lachalik, right? He had an idea, let's use it lalav, right? Let's say that you only chayav one time, right? That was his idea. You only chayav once. If we have these bright ideas like this, we have two psukim, then we can say one's a lav, one's a chal. All right. Yes. Now, just for context, in the beginning of the next stuff, Reb Ami says the same thing, and no one threw him out. He says, because the pasuk says los avim, and he said asam kulam v'od achas. It's one avodah, finished, right? The pasuk made them all one avodah. So even if he's zivech v'kiter v'nisach, he's shecht and he burns the ketoras and he pours wine, still you only have one. Fine. And here's a different version of what he said. I don't know if we should go into it now, but there's a different version of Rav Zakkai, which basically says the same thing, right? That I don't know, we'll pass over now. I think Chomer Shabbos, huh? Right. Basically, this is a different version of the same brisa. As comparing Shabbos and Shar Mitzvahs. And Shar Mitzvahs we're saying is Avodah Zarah. And we're saying by Shar Mitzvahs, if you do two things, Behelam Echad, there's two things, one forgetting, you're chayv on each one. That we know by Shabbos, you're chayv each one. The separate one, the separate chatos. Mash Enkim Shar Mitzvahs. Shar Mitzvahs saying is Avodah Zarah, which means Shar Mitzvahs you'll be chayv only one. So if it's Avodah Zarah, that's exactly what Zakkai was saying. And the question is that we say Shar Mitzvahs, if you do it by accident, chayiv, mash inkein, b'Shabbos you're potter. So again, that's the Abaye Rava thing. How could you be chayiv by accident if it's by Shlomo's kaven chayiv? According to Abaye, it's very simple, right? Because he says if you did meir me'ava shogag, you're chayiv, mash inkein b'Shabbos. Of course, we know Shabbos shogag is potter. So that's according to Rava. The only way you can have shogeg again, the same thing, is by Omer Mutter, where he thought it was Mutter. Like we said, he didn't know you're not supposed to serve Avodah Zarah. He didn't grow up like on this side of the plant. Fine. And then we end up saying the Masasik B'chalav B'arayis, the case where you're chayiv if you're Masasik. But by Shabbos, obviously Masasik is Potter. We actually fall off Omer Mutter for another reason. Fine. That's that. Okay, back to Samach Gimel. We're here on clear sailing.
A little smoother.
Yeah. Okay, Avami also holds a lot like we saw. Sorry, I was in a rush. I didn't put the Hebrew in. If you say Keliata, if you sing it, then you're chayiv. It's talking about a guy. The fact that the Jews, when they're by the Egel, and they said these so they didn't chuck Hashem out. They didn't throw him off the boat. They just said, "Oh, we want other gods also." This is what we said before. Other forms of worship of Balav, and if you mention a cause name, right? You can't say, "I'll meet you by the church," and you should make fun of the Avodah Zarah. And the Jews only worship idols, but permit arise to themselves. but not for any other reason. Later they became very attached to it. Fine. So right, like Kiva Shomer Eliata Chayev, right? Once he says Eliata, then he's Chayev, or Eliata to the Avodah Zarah. And like we just said, by the ego, they said you plural brought us out of time. So Rashi says Lo Kafru B'Kosh Baruch Hu Gam. They didn't deny Kosh Baruch Hu. They just said, we also want to explore other ideas, other gods, but we're not chucking Hashem Chas v'Shalom. Okay, and the question is, do you get Malchus for the other ones or not? So this is another idea, Lav Shabbat. The reason not to get Malchus is because there's one pasuk you learn out a million things from the one pasuk. So when you have one Lav and you learn out a million and two things, then it's called Lav Shabbat, so you don't get Malchus. Rav Dimi says, no, it's a Lav, you get Malchus, like every Lav in the Torah. Fine. You're not supposed to say to your friend, wait for me by this church, because you're not supposed to mention the names of Goyim. And don't make a partnership with a guy, even though many Jews have partnerships with Goyim. But the problem is you're going to come to take a shvuah, so don't take a shvuah. All leitzanas is usher, right? Except for leitzanas of Chum, right? All right, except for Avos Chum, you could
Making fun of them.
of the idols, right? Right, correct. Now here's the story. Well, first like we said, the Jews were the reason they wanted this because they wanted to have a rise for Hesed. That was the real reason they were into these things. There was a story. One time there was a kid, and he was in the garbage, and Elio found him, right? And he said, "I'm to this mishpacha," and he said, "I'm the only one left." And he said, "I'm going to teach you Shema Yisrael, Shema," right? And he said, "You say Hashem's name? That's disgusting." And he took his idol out of his pocket, and he hugged it and kissed it until his stomach blew up. And that says, like it says, the puzzle fine. So we see the Jews were very into Avodah Zarah. Once, maybe they got into it because of rice, but afterwards they were really into it. So fine. Right. So I think they were saying now they grew to love it, but yeah. Right. Now, so here's this daf Dalet. That's what we just said. The children of all Jews were steeped in Avodah Zarah. We ended the Yitzhak the Avodah Zarah, but they kept the Arayis Avodah Zarah, the Arayis Taiva. Machos of Moch is a form of Avodah Zarah, and all types of instructions if you want to know how to serve the Molech. Here is how to serve the what's it called? Here's how to go to the Molech. Right. Here's how to go to the Molech. This guy's the Molech. Right. And then this is what they did. Okay, it's playing again. And message. This is the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. So they wanted to conquer it. Don't ask me what it means, but in a Kabbalistic term, they put it in a pot and they sealed it up, and that was it. Fine. So let's just see if we're huh? It was a lead, right? It was a lead pot, correct? Fine. So here's a whole story that they said, we have this Avodah Zarah mitzvah to give schar, but it's not worth it because it's too much. So a paper came down from the Shemaim. It said MS, and then a line came out, and they said that's the Yisrael Avodah Zarah. So like we said, they put it to a lead pot, right, and you cover it over. And then he said, "Whole days Ratzani, since we're doing so well, let's take away the Yitzhak of rice." So then they wanted an egg. There's the egg shortage, right? Wow. And they couldn't, for a sick person, they couldn't find it because there was no desire at all, even for a chicken to lay an egg. So they said, "Fine, we'll take it back, but we'll put like something as I."
Limited, yeah.
Right. That what's the limit that you don't want to have relations with your krovim, with your relatives? I guess before that you did. Fine. So then there was another. There's a side story going back to Avodah Zarah that the lady wanted to. She was very sick, and she said, "If I get back, I'm going to serve all of Avodah Zarahs." And then she went to Pa'ar, and the Kohen said, "This is how you serve Pa'ar," and she's like, "No, thank you. I'll go back and be sick." Right. And then there's another guy who like really was got himself very ready, and he really did a good job by the Pa'ara, and all the priests were impressed by him. Fine. What he? Oh, he right. He whacked himself, right? Yeah.
Right, not
Kinech
realizing that
b'chok,
that
right. Right.
was-
No, it wasn't, but they're like, oh, but I wasn't all right. They were praising him, but oh, look at that, Kishma. Fine.
You was above and beyond. Like,
Right.
oh, man.
The Jews do it best. Fine. So is Moch considered part of Avodah Zarah, like the other Avodah Zarahs? Because the puzzle does talk about Moch separately. So the Tanakh is Chayav, Lazim Shimon says you Pater. There's different things by I guess on the line didn't carry through. Fine. So which page am I on? The Molech, there's you have to give it over. So you have to pass it over, like pass over. You have to pass the Molech over to the Molech priest, and you got to go between the two fires, like we saw in the picture. And the question is, if the person Suma Yashimahu, but if you do it to your grandchildren, then you're also chayiv. Fine. And it says creases 3 times. Lo mazeh, lo maba. Fine. He cries mazeh. Fine. Today. So Ovi Adonis. Basically the problem was, to make a long story short, there is a brisa somewhere, right? Gabe Krisos, which does not say Yidoni. Why does it not say Yidoni? Right? So Ovi Yidoni, right. So either Rabbi Yochanan says Nemru. So since they're in one love, we don't separate it out. There's no Krisos for Yidoni, I believe. That's why it doesn't say it over there.
Because over there it says 12 together, and it's Christmas here, and it says separately. Is that how you word it?
Over there, we're talking about Krisos, right? So that's why you don't list Yidoni, right?
Didn't he say that they were both together?
Huh?
I thought they just go together.
Right.
And so
Weren't they
they both
listed
get
together? That's
creases.
originally thought both have Christmas?
We thought both have Krisos. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Huh?
Fine.
Oh, the wrong page. That's why. What? Huh?
We'll go over it.
Fine. Okay, fine. So there's only so he says since they're together that you were saying they're grouped together. There's only one group, right? Reish Lakish says because there's no Misa. Yidoni is no Misa.
Right, the mice is separate from the first you put the bone and then like grumma.
Right. That's like the grumma thing, like the guy with the wheelchair, right? So it doesn't happen right away. Yeah, he was geschmack.
You've got a good bite.
Oh yeah. Oh, I think it's sort of. Yeah. So basically, a question on Reish Lakish. He says Yidoni was left over because there's no Misa. So what is the what's the Misa by O? The Misa by O is you move your arm, right?
Yeah.
And Reish Lakish said the bowing down is not a Misa, the Rabbana. And the answer is no. In Rabbi Kiva, this is considered a Misa, but according to Rabbanan, even moving your arm is not a Misa. Right, so Reish Lakish holds, according to that Rabbi Akiva holds that you're chayiv when there's a slight ma'isa. Rabbanan, even putting in your arm is not a ma'isa.
Like this?
Right, according to Rabbanan.
And the bone talks itself, it's not myself.
Right. So by the right over here, there's no ma'isa. Moving your lips is not a ma'isa over here. Why is moving your lips not a ma'isa? Because the main thing is in your heart. Right, right. The main thing is in your heart. Adam Zoman speak, but Adam Zoman is not considered a Maisa. What?
That's true.
Even
Still
though it's
feel
not
that.
nice.
We still kill them, but we call that something that doesn't have a Maisa. Right.
But they're speaking, so we say speech is not a Maisa. They say singing.
Right.
is.
Akim,
Right, singing was Maisa.
Right, whatever. Kimas was Simon.
Akim Simon is not a Maisa.
Moving on to.
And it's not possible.
Right.
No, it is, could be something delayed if it's expressed with your lips. Now we know what was in your lips, that's what you could be punished.
Right.
Wasn't speaking, enough. But if you have an intention to do something and you're speaking to express it, now we know what your intention is, you go punish for what you're. Come on.
But they said
Right.
it's
So the
removing
Adam
the
Zoman is the opposite. Adam Zoman is just based on what they say. So there, Akimis Fasam should be a Maisa. Why we call it something that doesn't have a Maisa? Right?
Yeah.
So in our case, we said that Akimis Fasam is not a Maisa because the Iker is a lave. Adam Zoman is not Iker Belev, so then it should be considered a Maisa.
It's Lav Maisa because the Iker's lave, or it's Lav Maisa Stam? Why you tired? Because of your lave.
No, I think it's the first one.
The first way?
Yeah, that's his Rashi, I think. Iker Chiyav, it's only his time for us. Oh, yes, Belev, Iker Chiyav. I don't know, fine.
Whatever.
Anyway, so it's the Adam Zoman, the main thing is the kol, which is interesting because it's not your lips, it's your kol. Like Chassid B'Kol is right. Anyway, the end of the daf with the Ov does not work on Shabbos. And Turnus Rufus asked Rabbi Kiva, how do you know Shabbos is special? And he said, because your father's grave doesn't burn on Shabbos. And also the Sambatrin doesn't go on Shabbos. Huh? Right, the Sambat, right. So he says right, so that was his proof that Shabbos is a real thing, and Shabbos continues, and also the fire stops on Shabbos and Kenan. And the question is, Dor Shalom Mesim is the person who starves himself and he goes to the cemetery, he hears all kinds of good stuff. I guess that's like that story in Brach with the guy in Rosh Hashanah, he slept in the cemetery.
Right.
His
We
wife
heard
kicked him
things
out.
that-
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't have, that's probably the same thing. He was hungry probably because his wife kicked him out the Rosh Hashanah night. And he went to and he went to the cemetery and he heard the talk. Right. Anyway, Akiva cried because he said, look what could happen if you know, if it's Mida Ra and a person starves himself, so for sure Mida Tova, if a person starves himself to get a Ruach of Hashem, then for sure he'll be successful in getting Ruach of Hashem. And that's it. All right. That's that. Yes. Yeah.